Mini lesson about temperature. There are two ways to measure temperature if you don't include the laboratory. Laboratory is often used an extra way called Kelvin, which I'm not going to talk about because the GE won't. So we talked about Fahrenheit in our earlier lecture. So water freezes at 32. Water boils at 212. And in between, there's 180 degrees, perhaps because Fahrenheit wanted his original one to be shaped like a protractor with 180 degrees. Just in case you're curious, the bottom of this picture is saying that the coldest we can actually make anything is -459. But unless you are doing weird things in a physics lab, that doesn't matter. There is a theoretical lower bottom, and I'm not sure how close scientists have actually made it. That would be an interesting Google search. But at that temperature, the atoms stop vibrating and you can't get any colder. Okay, in the metric system, the SI system, then people said Fahrenheit was crazy. None of those numbers make any sense. Let's do something easy. So instead, water is now going to freeze at 0. That's a nice thing as like a cold number, right? When does it start snowing? And water boils at 100. So then the number in between is 100 degrees. So if I want to switch back and forth and say that today it's a summer day in Eugene and it is 86 degrees Fahrenheit, how would I find what that is in Celsius? I can say on this picture it's going to be about 30. But how would I really know, right? Or similarly, if I started in Celsius, what would it be in Fahrenheit? It's just like in the car, if you're changing your speed from miles per hour to kilometers per hour, there's a conversion rate. But it's actually not like that, because to go from miles per hour to kilometers per hour back and forth, you can just multiply or divide, similar to between feet and inches or feet and meters. You can just multiply or divide by whatever the conversion rate is. You can't do that with temperature. And the reason is that multiplying and dividing by a number is sort of like stretching things out. Your inches are stretched out to be feet because they're now times 12. Or shrinking, your feet are now inches, so we're dividing by 12 to shrink them. Imagine like a superhero comic with a stretch gun or a shrink gun that makes things big or small. But with temperature, it doesn't line up at 0. So all of this kind of stretching and shrinking, first you have to kind of fudge it so they line up at 0, and then you can use your superhero stretch shrink gun. So that's what these formulas are doing. The Fahrenheit formula says if I know what the Celsius is, let's plug it in. So let's use that 30 that I had marked a moment ago. So I'm going to plug in the 30. What's happening first with order of operations? Multiply or addition? Multiply, right? This is one term, and that's another term, using our term. So I'm going to say the 1.8 times 30, whatever that is, 1.8 times 30 is 54. And then when I'm done with that, I will add my 32. So in Fahrenheit, that same 30 degrees is 86. So they weren't rounding. What did we do? The times 1.8 said that I'm starting with a measurement that does get to 0 at 0. So I'm going to start by stretching it out times 1.8. So this 100 degrees becomes 180. See the 1.8, 100 to 180. And then once I've stretched it, I have to bump it up 32 to make things match. Going the other way, now let's start on this 86. If I put in the 86, then I can't stretch it because it doesn't start at 0. And so it doesn't really make sense to make something half as tall or half as hot if you don't get to 0 normally, right? So first we're going to do our minus 32, and the parentheses force us to do that. So we will get 54. Then I can do the divided by 1.8. We're shrinking it down to get rid of this one. Instead of 180 degrees from here to here, now there's only 100. So what was 54 divided by 1.8? We did that up here. It's going to be 30. So everyone likes this on math tests because they give you the formulas and all you do is plug it in. And with a calculator, this is like the calculator's problem. It's not even your problem. But this is why it works. There's two things going on. One is that there's a plus or minus 32 because I need zeros to line up. And then a times 1.8 or a divided by 1.8 because 100 and 180, am I stretching or shrinking to make those match?